Plural Noun Proposition papers. Today we're looking at political party positions as our sample. And the reason why we use plural noun propositions in this case is because we have different opposing viewpoints that we need to put in some kind of organized fashion. And so I find that using our plural noun proposition format is a great way to not only study and evaluate political positions, but maybe more importantly, to understand what we think, what the different political parties think, and essentially, what does the Bible say? And so we want to process that and then put that down on paper so that we actually have formulated a biblical perspective of political party positions. And so that's what matters. And that's where we want to be as Christians. We don't want to be on the Republican side or the Democratic side. We want to be on the biblical side. So how do we go about that? Again, we start with our 5-step process. Again, a plural noun proposition, 5-step process for writing proposition papers are, first we determine what the proposition of the paper is. In this case, the proposition in a sense is being driven because we're looking at political party platforms. And so they're going to determine, today we're talking about the wall. Tomorrow we're talking about gun control. Then we're talking about abortion. So they're dictating what the proposition is. We're just formulating that into a proposition position. Compose the outline then of the paper. Again, in this case, a lot of the structure of our outline is going to be dictated to us, and I'll explain that because we want a certain format, which is we want to know what your perspective is. We want to know the Republican perspective, the Democratic perspective, and then the biblical perspective. So we're really asking and driving 4 key points, which will become 4 key paragraphs. Prepare the body. That means you're going to have the supporting evidence of those 4 key positions. Write an introduction and then formulate a conclusion. So it begins with, again, our brainstorming. Our Cornell notes is going to look a little bit different because you're going to have to, read a little bit and look up things as much as you would like to get even more detail, but you're going to need to take notes. And so in essence, you might get instead of your traditional Cornell note taking, you might want to get a white piece of paper and just draw a big cross in the middle of it. And in one box, you have the Republican view, and in the other box, you have the Democratic view. In the third quadrant, you have your position. The fourth one, you have a biblical perspective. So you can adjust your note-taking depending on the type of course you're taking, whether it's video, lecture, podcast, reading. And so in this case, primarily it's going to be reading. So our brainstorming is going to come out of that. Really what we're trying to do is make it simple, right? So we want to synthesize the argument to really drive home kind of one key thought or point, and that'll help us to understand what the Republican position is, what the Democratic position is. Even though there's a lot of sub-points and subheadings, let's try to find that one driving force. The goal is to make sure that you understand what the debate is, to clearly understand what is being argued here. I think one of the things that you'll find is a lot of times, I don't know that the political party understands what their position is. They just keep throwing out excuse after excuse or complaint after complaint. Remember, one of the things we're looking to get you to understand is when we see a problem, we're asking for a solution, right? So many times I see this mistake. It's, okay, we have a problem. There's a lot of homeless people in America. Okay, I'm sad about the fact that there's a lot of homeless people in America. It's not right that there's a lot of homeless people in America. We need to do something about the homeless people in America. There's no solutions. Restating the problem, getting upset at the problem, isn't fixing the problem. And so we want you to be able to take these political positions and then at some point you've got to come up with solutions, and you'll see that one party over another one really has kind of the same mantra, the same solution for everything, which is, we'll just throw more money at it. We'll just throw more money at it. Let them do it and throw more money at it. Obviously, I'm a little biased here, but that is a recurring theme. So what we want to do in order to understand what the debate is, understand the theme, is identify the key issues, again, synthesize to kind of the core issue. What are the core arguments? What are the arguments? We're talking about a wall today, right? A wall on the southern border in Mexico. What's the issue? What is the key argument? And if your argument is you want to stop drugs, well, what's the evidence? What is the facts? Do drugs come to America from Mexico? Do you have any facts to support that? Yeah, there are lots of facts that support that. What are your concerns? Is your concern that it's hurting Americans because all the drugs from Mexico are so easily coming up? Is that your concern? What's your concern? So make sure you are able to clearly articulate it and then support your claims or your opinions with some kind of facts or evidence. If you do that, we're going to be able to, and again, this is going to be a little bit different because in our brainstorming, very clearly we have 4 key positions. So it's not like our traditional plural noun proposition where we're asking you, give me 3 reasons why the Mexican border wall is good. Give me 3 reasons why the Mexican border wall is bad. That's not what we're asking. What we're really asking you to do is summarize the situation. And so the brainstorming here becomes a 4-point, not a 3-point. The 4-point, again, Republican view, Democratic view, biblical view, and your view. So that's what we're going to draw out of it. We're going to come up with our key, just 1 sentence for each perspective. That'll really make this paper have good structure when you understand what is your key point. I think the hardest one's going to be yours. The Republicans are going to be clear. The Democrats are going to be clear. Some of these issues are going to be, where's gun control in the Bible? That could be a little difficult. But your position, you have to have a clear position. Yes, we are asking you to take a position, to defend your position, to argue, to win the verdict of your point. It's a good process, good exercise. And so today we're looking at a plural noun proposition of a political review for perspective of the Mexican border wall. And so the way we're going to write this, and really almost all of them, is kind of the same structure, but it is a plural noun proposition structure. In the Republican perspective is, the Democrat perspective is, the biblical perspective is, my perspective is. Okay, see how that works? We're going to have our same structure, right? Democratic view, Republican view, biblical view, your view. You're going to have your proposition, and then your supporting details, definitions, facts, quotes, questions. What are they? This is where we get into the kind of the meat and potatoes of what is the issue here. I know from my background, I grew up in Southern California. I grew up just a couple hours from the southern border in Mexico, in Tijuana, and we would go into Tijuana, and we went in there as missionaries, and we went in there and built bunkhouses and orphanages and did things like that. You know what's been at the border since I've been around and alive? A wall, a fence. So when this subject first came up, my perspective was, we already have a wall. So the idea that this is new, the idea that this would be such a polarizing political view with 2 parties, well, both parties have had presidents who supported the wall. So what's changed? Some other interesting facts with border walls. There's border walls all over the world. The Great Wall of China is probably the most famous border wall ever. But in Europe, there's border walls all over the place. So border walls in and of themselves can't be racist when everybody has border walls. Everybody has borders. And so these are some of the things that you will be discussing, because that becomes the issue of, it's not just a border wall. Part of the sub-issue is it's racism. Part of the sub-issue is, well, what about, America having the welcoming arms to immigrants? And isn't that the American way? And so it really brings up some lively discussions. And the important part, again, is clearly articulate what's the Republican view, what's the Democratic view. What does the Bible say about borders? Now, that's an interesting one. Does the Bible say anything about borders? Yeah, the Bible does. The Bible's not silent about Israel's defined borders, and Israel not going into other countries, and other countries not co-inhabiting with Israel. The removal of somebody's border rock is mentioned in the Bible. And so the Bible does talk about borders. So what's the biblical perspective and view? And then finally, how are you going to summarize this? What position or stance do you take? And now let me encourage you in this way. Do not think you have to take a Republican or a Democratic view. Your view should be drawn and driven by a biblical perspective. And so that should be what your final conclusion is. So, political party positions, plural noun proposition papers.